Potential is everywhere. It's in our schools, our neighborhoods, and our future workforce. But while potential is equally distributed, opportunity is not. Welcome to the Empower Potential podcast, brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Bay Area. Every episode, we explore the stories, strategies, and science behind mentorship and how one consistent relationship can change a life and a community forever. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sheil, and you're listening to the Empower Potential podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. So, meet Liz Reidel. She's the National Director at the SIFMA Foundation. For over 2 decades, she has been driving force in youth financial literacy, overseeing the globally renowned stock market game. A Columbia University master's grad with a heart of service, she began her journey as a Jesuit volunteer teaching fourth grade on a reservation in Montana. Today, she bridges the world of education and Wall Street to help young people lead financially intelligent lives, a full circle mission for someone who played the stock market game herself as a kid. So, thanks so much for being with us today, Liz, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheila. It's wonderful to be part of your podcast. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So let's just get cracking. So I know I kind of outlined your career journey a little bit, but could you maybe briefly just take us through your professional path, where you started, and how you ended up where you ended up?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I would say my first career point would be my experience in Montana. So, I taught fourth grade on this Indian reservation, and it was right after I graduated from college. I like to think of it as the kind of hardest, most challenging experience that I've ever had. Um, and from there, I moved back to Pennsylvania where I grew up. And then I taught middle school English for 3 years. Um, and then through that whole time, I realized, you know what, I don't know if I want to be teaching for the long term. I still really like education. I was also really interested. I had studied abroad when I was in college. So I was like, do I want to maybe teach abroad or do I want to? I kind of wanted to get more. Um, I always had an interest in econ and finance, and it led me actually to find a program at Teachers College Columbia, and it was focused on international finance and planning, and it was sounded really kind of up my alley. It aligned a lot with my background and my interests. So I got my master's degree in 2003, and then I was really fortunate, and it's one of the recommendations that I provide a lot of students is when you're in school, if you can possibly get a position, a work study position at the Career Center, definitely do it. So that was when I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to work in the work study or the Career Center. So my role was to see all of the job applications and job postings that came in, and obviously one of them that came across my desk was for it was the Securities Industry Association at that point. And it sounded kind of perfect. It had kind of my education background. It had the opportunity to travel. I was young at the time, and then obviously I participated in the stock market game, and it came full circle. So that's kind of the full overview of my career. It hasn't had too many stops since I've been with the SIFMA Foundation for so long, um, but yeah, kind of an overview.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So you started your career more in the elementary like education and then kind of transferred over to finance and are now sort of in the financial literacy and education world. So that's a cool bridge. But really to I guess go back to that, how did your career or your sort of experience in elementary education um, how did that sort of like being immersed in the community shape your view of what potential looked like in the youth before you even, entered the financial education world?
So I think what I've realized when I was in Montana, but also when I was in Pennsylvania, kids are kids everywhere. They have the same dreams, they have the same goals. they have the same potential, but I think what the key difference is access and opportunity. And I think that's what's really fundamental about and what keeps me kind of excited about working at the SIFMA Foundation is it really shapes everything that we do. Is it provides opportunity regardless of where you're located. So yeah, um, kids are kids. Kids have the same, they're the same. But again, what differs um, uh, is do they have the access? Do they have the support system backing them up? And do they have the belief that they can kind of um, move beyond their certain area that they're in. So I would say, yeah, potential is there, regardless of the resources that are at hand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's part of what makes like our partnership so fruitful is that, kind of bridging the gap between access and opportunity. And you definitely hit on it, there. Um, but I want to ask you a little bit more of a personal question. So, who were some of your mentors, and how do you feel your mentors helped you develop into the professional that you are today?
So I've been really fortunate in that I would say in each aspect of my professional career, I've had key people that have really shaped um, my professional and also personal life. So when I was in Montana, this position through the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, um, we worked. There were 6 volunteers total, and we worked at a school that was run by nuns and a priest. And you have to remember, this was my first experience teaching when I got out of school. So I am brand new. I am tasked with educating 10 fourth graders. So I really leaned on one of the nuns who had been there many, many years, was the fifth grade teacher, and really utilized her as kind of a sounding board and answering those questions of like, am I doing this right? Am I like, just all of the questions as a new teacher. So she was really helpful, just to shape that experience and to really guide my thought process as a new teacher. And then when I was in Pennsylvania, I would say the principal was really instrumental in kind of kind of allowing me to think outside of teaching. As I mentioned, I really enjoyed teaching when I was doing it, but it was one of those things where I felt like there's something else that I feel like I'm meant to do or I want to explore. So this principle was really helpful in kind of allowing me or allowing me to talk through what I thought I wanted to do. And obviously this was a principal who didn't want to lose me as a teacher. So she had no kind of skin in the game of like pushing or crafting where I should be. So that was really helpful in me um, just again thinking beyond my immediate area of like I can explore something else. I can kind of look elsewhere to see what will be fulfilling. And then my current position, I am really fortunate in that the person that I call a mentor, when I first started at the SIFMA Foundation or SIA, as I mentioned, this person served as my manager. So she reported, or I reported to her. I uh, worked alongside her, but now, I mean, since I've been with the SIFMA Foundation for so long, she's now a colleague. And that's been really interesting to go from, okay, somebody who I've really kind of reported to really now collaborate with, which has been interesting, and seeing that relationship really evolve has been really helpful too.
Yeah. Um, I do want to do like a little quick follow-up on that. Because I'm sure, having a mentor who's a manager, you'll receive constructive criticism, not just, praise and things like that. And I know for young people, hearing criticism can sometimes be really hard. So how do you feel like that mentor or your manager and that point, made you feel safe enough to receive that feedback and grow from it?
Absolutely. I would say receiving constructive criticism is always really, really hard, really hard. But I think when it is coming from a place of trust, um, and it feels honest and it feels authentic, um, and you don't feel judged, I think that's the key, where you don't feel as though like your backs you don't feel like you're being picked on. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but you are able to look at yourself in a different realm. And I think that was what was really kind of eye-opening for me is, hey, this person isn't critiquing me, but really helping me grow, and having that eye-opening experience of this is a growth opportunity. This is it's coming from a place of trust, um, and respect was key for me.
Yeah, and I believe you also described one of your mentors as a sounding board, and sort of a safe place to ask questions. Why do you think having that sort of psychological safety is a good ingredient to moving a young person from, surviving to thriving in their role?
You can't grow if you're fearful to ask questions. You can't move in a direction when you're always scared of the feedback that you're going to get. And I would say growth is coming from making mistakes. And I mean, I view it from a couple of different avenues now as a parent, and I have a child that's going to go off to college, and I want to shield her from everything. I want it to be an absolutely, like, I don't want her to make the same mistakes that I have made. And I want it to be this avenue where it's, uh, again, where I don't want her to have to suffer, but that's doing her a disservice. So I think it can't always be rainbows and butterflies all of the time. Um, you have to take a step back as a parent, but that's what's so powerful also about having a mentor outside of your family, of your mentor where, um, again, parents want to shield their child from making mistakes, but mentors can also kind of guide them through if a mistake has been made. How do you navigate that now that you're in that space? And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sort of framework of sort of mistakes are going to be made, but it's more about sort of navigating and being able to learn from that mistake moving forward. I think that's a really helpful framework, especially as young people sort of get into the workplace and into, looking at the job market. And I think that kind of goes into my next question as well. Um, what are some professional skills that often get overlooked in the digital age? And then, why do you feel like that specific skill is a game changer, for young professionals entering the workforce?
I would say in the current environment where everything is immediate, if you have a question, you pull out your phone and you ask ChatGPT or you Google it. Everything is just at your fingertips all of the time. And I think what is so important that gets overlooked is the process of making an informed decision of I mean, again, we're bombarded with all of this information, and oftentimes, sometimes me especially, is I'll have something that is in my inbox that I want to immediately take care of and just get it out of my inbox. But I think what is important is kind of weighing all of your options, understanding the risks that are associated with one decision versus another decision. Um, and I I I often think about the 24-hour rule, and the 24-hour rule is so applicable not only in a work situation, but I mean, it's also in personal life as well. So I mean, I think of the 24-hour rule like with my kids and they play sports, where you often hear from the coach, like at the very beginning of the season, do not contact me at least for 24 hours. So if you're unhappy with if you're if you're unhappy with how much playing time your child has gotten or a particular call or whatever, sit on it for 24 hours and then reach out. And it's amazing how often whatever the issue you thought you wanted to run to the coach about has been diffused. And I think that's really important too with work, where I think again, like I alluded to before, if there is something that's in my inbox and I immediately want to respond, um, taking a step back, taking a deep breath, but also sleeping on it, and how I'm able to kind of look at a certain situation after I've taken that time is so important. And oftentimes, where I've wanted to respond in a certain way, I've waited and and reflected on making a particular decision, and it's changed everything, and it's given me perspective, and again, weighing the different options that you have available to you is so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that reflection piece is really important. Like you said, everything's so immediate nowadays, but I think really taking that time, even if it's just 24 hours to sort of sit, reflect, can really diffuse, especially, high intensity situations in the workforce. So, um, I do want to go back to one point that you made. I think you had talked about how it's good to have a safe space to make mistakes as well. So I believe when we first talked, you framed the stock market game not just as a math lesson, but some sort of safe space to make mistakes. Why do you think it's important for us to give young people environments to, fail or make mistakes that prepare them for the real world?
Absolutely. I mean, I think failure is only dangerous if there's no room to learn from it. So we often refer to the stock market game as kind of a learner's permit into the financial markets, where again, I have a daughter who's driving, and I'm not immediately going to put her on the highway. I'm going to put her into driver's ed. I'm going to make sure she knows kind of the lay of the land, the rules of the road. And I think that's what's so powerful about the stock market game is our young people and adults who utilize the program are really in the driver's seat. They have a portfolio where they are making real world decisions. They are learning, okay, what is the difference between a stock? What is the difference between mutual funds and ETFs? When is it appropriate to, or how do you incorporate bonds into a portfolio? Obviously they're going to make mistakes, and that's the key. I mean, that's what's we want them to think about what they are doing, so when it comes to the time when they graduate from high school or they graduate from college and they have their first paycheck, knowing the next natural progression for them is to open a 401k, put money aside in their 403b. It's the exposure is so important. And I think one of the things that we have also realized with doing the stock market game is students who are exposed to financial literacy concepts are that much less likely to spend more than they earn. They are more likely to open up a savings account, more likely to have an investing account. So exposure is so important.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think, that's definitely something that I feel like there are gaps in just current education in terms of financial literacy, and I think the stock market game is just, one of those tools, those amazing tools that's really helping bridge that gap. We actually, as a staff as well as, some of our bigs and littles got to participate in the stock market game as well, and I know there was some great feedback from that. So, definitely an amazing game, amazing program. You guys are doing great things over there. Um, so One thing that you emphasized when we first met as well was sort of the power of networking and collaboration. I know I've talked to a lot of young people who, feel intimidated by the idea of just, networking with people they just don't know. But how would you advise them to start sort of building those connections?
I would say networking can be scary. I mean, I put myself back into the situation when I was just out of college, and I totally understand how that feels. I think for me at least, um, being in front of middle school students, that is the first thing that is going to kind of build your confidence, is being able to like command a classroom. But in terms of like relationship building is just having the confidence. Um, but also, it's about building relationships and being curious. And I think oftentimes when we are nervous, when we're meeting somebody for the first time, the first thing that we're thinking about is, how am I going to respond to that? What am I like? What am I going to say when they say this? And I think authentically listening, um, and not feeling as though, you always have to have a specific answer, but also I think being curious, um, and asking about kind of their story of like, how did they get to where they are? Where a lot of times it's not a straight line, where they're going to have, different life events that I think are easy to make connections. So maybe if a young person is meeting, somebody, they can bond over a part-time job that they had. So just being curious, being listening authentically is so important to make those connections. But it's relationship building and forming common connections.
Yeah. No, I definitely think trying to simplify it and just sort of, frame it more as building connections is very helpful. I know myself, I mean, I get intimidated by, just going to events and trying to introduce myself. And I think there's this concept of people are always trying to sell themselves and have this elevator pitch. And, that's great. It's great to have that. But at the same time, like you said, it's also about building that genuine connection and also active listening, right? So,
And I
very
think you
important.
can and I think you can tell who's authentic. I mean,
Right.
you can definitely tell when somebody is selling themselves, and they want something from you, or and authentic being authentic is there's no replacement for it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, kind of to go back to the stock market game, I remember when we first talked, you had mentioned that people often think that the stock market game is just for kids, but it's also open to adults as well. So, how does breaking down that intimidation factor around investing really help level the playing field for not just the youth, but families as well that we serve here?
Breaking down the barrier and the intimidation factor is probably the biggest aspect of my role at the SIFMA Foundation. And I mean, generally, how I like to frame it is it's kind of like learning a different language. So if I was going to learn Spanish, I'm not going to have I'm not going to have, or the feeling that I'm gonna be fluent in a week. I'm not gonna be able to go to Spain and have a full-fledged conversation with somebody. I'm gonna break that down into different components that I can slowly begin to understand and apply. And I think that is the same thing with the stock market game, is really breaking it down where it is understandable and accessible, um, and I think once you make it accessible and not so foreign, that's when more parents, more families understand that, wow, this is open to me. I can utilize this and kind of, get my feet wet in a safe environment. But I also think too is just being intimidated in terms of, like, adults, when we talk to adults about, investing. I think there's this notion that by a certain age, they need to have everything figured out. Oh, I'm 25. I should know about investing. And it's okay. It's never too late to get involved. It's never too late to kind of explore some aspects of concepts that you don't know. And that's what's really kind of exciting. It's never too late to get involved in the stock market game and learn the basics. I think that's what's key is there's not a particular right or perfect way to do it. It's a matter of just learning the building blocks that will get you started, which is key.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting because I think we tell something similar to our bigs here that, a lot of them come to us and say, oh, like, I don't know if I'll be a good volunteer mentor because I don't have my life figured out and, I don't feel like I can teach something to my little, things like that. And we always emphasize like you don't have to have everything figured out. It's as simple as taking a kid out for ice cream. It's as simple as having a conversation with them, listening to them and just being there for them. So I really think that's an interesting connection between our two programs um, that I just made. So we often talk about this empower potential as our tagline here on the podcast. So when a young person gains financial literacy through stock market game, through SIFMA, and has a big brother or big sister to cheer them on, how do you feel like those two forces work together to change their life trajectory?
It's key. I mean, it is skills, it's capacity building, but then it's a built-in support system automatically. And I mean, I think oftentimes, I mean, just touching on kind of the conversation, the topic we had before is that we focus a lot on the little and what is the little gaining from this um, partnership. And obviously they're gaining kind of a mentor, but I think also noticing and seeing the impact that the mentor is gaining from this experience as well is really profound and really powerful. Um, and what one of the things that we do with the SIFMA Foundation each semester is we survey our teachers and we survey whether or not what their experience was like with the stock market game. And one of the key takeaways that we ask them is, how has the program impacted your own saving and investing practices? And overwhelmingly 98, 99% of the respondents say it's positively impacted. It's made me take a step back, look at my own investing accounts and get more involved in them, get started in them, which is amazing. It's just an extra offshoot. But again, in terms of the little, it's having uh, that sounding board, hopefully that lifetime adult in there to serve in a positive capacity at such an early age to hopefully again build throughout their life to ask questions and help build their confidence.
Yeah, so last couple questions here. I do want to ask this. If you could go back to Liz, who's teaching fourth grade in Montana, and give her one piece of advice about, the professional journey she's about to embark on, what would it be?
That's a really good question. And I would say the impact that just having a positive impact on young people. I think that is something that's really important where or the impact is going to be bigger than you think. So I think when you're in a classroom with 10 students, I mean, how much impact am I going to have? Um, and I think oftentimes throughout your career, you're kind of lost in the grind of work and getting to that next level, getting to that next goal. And you kind of lose sight of, again, what impact am I having? And I think that's really important. Um, And in terms of the stock market game and having participated in the stock market game when I was in 6th grade, that's kind of even cooler to take a look at and to kind of reflect upon. So again, when I was in 6th grade, the stock market game was very different. There was no internet. We had Scantron sheets. Um, and it has evolved so much. And the fact that we have impacted over 23 million students since we started in 1977, and to know that I've been a small part of that is really really rewarding. It's kept me here so long. um I think I think that's what I would say to myself, is that you will have an impact. um your work matters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely matters. I mean, we've seen it firsthand here at, Big Brothers Big Sisters. I mean, our partnership has been so fruitful so far. Um, and yeah, it's interesting how you sort of touched on the fact that, oftentimes you get sort of lost in that grind of, well, I'm only teaching these 10 students, but it's almost as if there's an impact beyond the classroom, beyond that sort of, you know, relationship with those 10 students. And that's something that we found even in our one-to-one matching relationships, our mentoring relationships, is that it's not just the little that gets impacted, it's also the big, but it's also the little's family. And then, eventually that permeates throughout society as well. So, I think there's definitely a connection there as well. Um,
Yeah, and one thing I would say with that in terms of the family, I mean, that's a cool kind of anecdote that we hear from teachers and advisors all of the time, is that their student or their child has participated in the stock market game. They come home at the dinner table, they're actually speaking. It's not like, hey, how was your day? Fine. They're actively talking about their portfolio and saying and pulling in current events and saying, hey, did you know that NVIDIA reported their earnings, or this current event? What we're asking, what do you think this current event is going to, the impact it's going to have on the markets? And that's really exciting to see, where, again, parents are getting involved, learning what the students are learning. And if they don't have exposure to investing, they begin to get exposure to investing. But also on the flip side, the students are actively asking their parents, can you open an IRA for me? The only thing I want for my birthday is a share of Disney stock because they make my favorite movie. So seeing kind of the influence and the real world impact is so amazing, and real, which is great.
yeah, that's incredible. So last question, for any of our matches out there, is there anything that you'd like to say about the partnership between our two organizations?
I would say we're just at the beginning. So I am so excited to see where we're going to be a year from now. But I would also say enjoy the process. Um, Enjoy kind of being uncomfortable with what you don't know right now. And that's okay, is that there is time to get it all figured out. But also don't be afraid to reach out with questions and to ask for help. Um, Again, we are so thrilled to have this partnership. We are it just, our organizations align so well. um, that, yeah, enjoy the process, enjoy the ride. The markets are on a roller coaster, so it'll be a very interesting semester, and it'll be a very interesting year ahead, that's for sure.
Well, Liz, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Yeah, thanks so much for being with us.
Sheila, I so appreciate that. So appreciate it. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for sharing your story, and we'll catch you in the next episode, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Empower Potential podcast. If you found yourself nodding along today, either agreeing with something that you heard or simply enjoyed hearing from our community, we invite you to join us in our mission to connect Bay Area youth with caring, consistent mentors. We have youth right here in the Bay Area waiting for that person. Head over to bayareabigs.org to learn more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you tune in for our next episode coming soon.